Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Future Is Now podcast. I am joined today with a friend from a while ago. We met about 5 years ago, Nicole Smithee. How are you doing today, Nicole?
I'm doing great. It's really exciting to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm honored that you would join me on The Future Is Now. And so just to give a little bit of context to everybody listening, you came to our church or my home church about, 5-ish years ago where you met me and Adrian for. Was that for our ladies conference then? Or was that just
Yeah,
for?
I was there for our ladies conference, and man, it was an amazing conference. I had the best time. I remember actually being a little sick on that trip. I think I was like fighting a
That's
cold.
right, you were.
And Pastor Tina was like the kindest human possible. She was like the surrogate mom I needed at that moment. She was like, let's make sure you have all of your cold medicine. Let's pray over you. Let's get everything set. I just ended up having such an amazing experience. And you don't often get that when you're kind of traveling a lot back to back. So man, I just love, I love your church. I love the team and certainly love your pastors.
Awesome. Yeah. Honestly, when I was thinking about guests to bring onto the podcast, you were a name that came up because I know when we met, back then you had just a passion in your heart for women's ministry. Just that realm. Obviously from your own experiences. And so you actually started, and you can actually talk about, when this whole thing started and how it started, but you have a platform called Iridescent Women that it's incredible. It's empowering women. It's finding potential and letting people grow in that. And so I guess we can start off with just what is that ministry? How did that become a reality for you? And I guess why that is a big passion for you.
Yeah, no, thanks. A lot of life has happened since we were last, hanging out together.
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
I launched a company in that time. Iridescent is a platform for women and by women. It's a digital media company, and it's also a membership program for women. So what's really exciting about living in the digital space is that we're meeting women right where they're at, and we get to have a global sense of community that also feels really connected and truly community, and not just being a part of program or just consuming content. And we really launched Iridescent out of a passion to, one, champion the God-given brilliance in every woman, to help her maximize her potential, and also to create a space. We're living in a digital media, social media age, and there's a lot of highlight reels. And even though we talk about how those are nonsense, we keep perpetuating them. And we really wanted to create a space where women could be real, where we could celebrate their successes and they could unapologetically own those successes, and also come alongside women in the midst of their struggles and just be like, let's actually talk about issues that are relevant in our lives. And so our platform, since we launched, which we're about to we'll be celebrating 3 years this June, 3 years as a company. But we've had over, 200 different writers on our platform with new articles every day. We have a podcast, we have videos, we have resources. And then this year we launched a membership program out of that to take that step further and not just give women content that's really relevant for her life to empower and encourage her, but also to welcome her into a space of community. So we have live events every month. We have a resource of the month. We have a private IG community where people can really connect with each other. We have a women supporting women directory, and it was really important for us to create a platform for women where we spoke to things that, yes, we spoke to faith, but we also spoke to stuff that's happening in the news and stuff that's happening in culture, and talk about our careers and talk about our finances and talk about relationships and talk about our health and mental health and our wellness, where really we could unpack a lot of different issues in real time and create a safe space for women to be able to share their perspectives, even if they might differ, and for us to utilize the opportunities as things are happening to not only encourage each other, but to bring out the best in each other. So it's been pretty amazing to watch what's happened in the last, 3 years since we launched it. And I should say that I never thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur in my life. Like ministry is my background. I've launched ministries. I've supported pastors. I've been, I've been in ministry since I was 19, right? So a long time. And, but I've just felt very, very strongly a few years ago. I was actually about to speak at a young adults and youth conference. And right before I was getting up to speak, I was just looking at really a sea of young people worshiping God and young adults like genuinely worshiping God. I was taking in that moment And I was praying, and I normally do that before I go speak. That's a good thing to do.
That's a good thing. That's a plus.
Yeah, probably good. But during that time, I really felt like God was asking me to look beyond just the crowd and to look at specific faces. And they couldn't see me looking at them, right? That would have been weird, but I could see from off stage. So I started scanning the audience and the auditorium and a little bit more closely. And there was a theme that emerged. They were all young women. And at that moment, I really felt like God was saying, hey, in this next season of your life, I want you to invest. I'm calling you to young women. And if you don't start taking steps forward in obedience, then it's going to be disobedience. Like you have to start doing something because of this moment. So even though I had no idea if it was going to be a company or a ministry, if it was going to be live events or if it was going to be online, I really just had this word from God that I said, okay, I got to start being obedient, and started, at the time, I remember going back to my hotel room that evening and calling my then boyfriend. I don't even think we're engaged yet now, my husband. And he's a businessman. He's a visionary. He's just a brilliant mind in so many different ways. But he's so a New Yorker. Like we were meant to live in the city that we do, because he'll just give it to you straight, you know? So I was like, I'm just going to start talking out loud about kind of the possibility of what Iridescent Women could be, even not knowing the name or anything. But as I started to talk out loud, I knew a few things. I knew that I wanted to meet women where they were at, which meant I was going to be in the digital space, because that's where they're at. They're on their phones, they're on their laptops, you know, and I also wanted to create a bridge in the conversations that were happening within church walls and what was happening in secular society when it came to women, and create that bridge. I wanted to create a platform for women and by women. So I didn't want it to just be my voice and my name, but really to create space for women to own their voice and own their story and share it and see the impact. So I knew those things. So as I started talking to Ben, my husband, he just was so affirming. Man, you got to be careful who you tell your dreams to in their infancy, because it can either, shut it down, or it can build a lot of courage for you to just continue in obedience. And that's really what happened in that moment for me. He was so affirming. He said, "You're made to do this. Like you got to take steps forward," and has been a huge supporter of me along the way. And then after that, I talked to my pastors right away, because they're just so wise, and was like, hey, and dear friends of mine, and they've always championed me personally and the dreams in my heart, and have been so empowering and releasing. And I actually just want to honor that, because in a lot of spaces that's not accessible to people, but I just have some pretty extraordinary friends and pastors in my world. And then I chatted with a dear friend of mine at the time who I knew had a shared passion for young women, even though, I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew I needed to talk to her because I'd seen the way that she had mentored and poured into women in the past. So I shared kind of what was on my heart, not really knowing all of what it would become, and said, hey, do you want to do something with me? It was a very sheepish conversation on my end. At the end, I was like, no pressure, but if you want to be a part. And she was like, I'm all in. And we're business partners. Like we co-founded Iridescent. We are best friends and we do life together. She's like a sister. And it's just been really amazing to see that partnership really grow and develop since that day where we kind of sat down with coffee and dreamt together about reaching women. So that's kind of, it's a really long answer, but there's just so many steps, I think, to launching something. And for me, I really had to be very clear. It wasn't just I'll give this a shot. I really, really felt the Spirit of God leading me in this direction. And I think each step we've taken as a company and how we've grown in the last few years has just been one step of obedience after another, and some hard lessons along the way,
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that type of platform because I feel like it's obviously, because of the success that you're seeing, but it's obviously such a huge need. And, here in Puyallup, there's a women's gym that was created. It's called V Athletics, and it's amazing. And this community of women here are just obsessed with it because they love it, and they love, and it's so funny because there's such a difference between when I go to the gym, I'm I'll put in my AirPods, I'll put on my sweatshirt, nobody talk to me, right? I'm in and out. Whereas my wife, Adrienne, and all of her friends, they just thrive in that community aspect. Not to say that guys don't need community, but there's just such a, I feel like a lack, especially from this past year of all this isolation that people have been feeling, that it's really cool to see a platform that's dedicated to that. And I love kind of how you outlined everything, it was such a great answer. So what I loved about it is you said first, God spoke it to you, and so you had to do something about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be the scariest part of it. I mean,
sure.
you know, I'm sure you've talked to people as well where they're like, yeah, I just feel like God has been wanting to do this for years. And you're like, well, why haven't you done anything to start that? But a good place to start is always counsel around you. And I think that sometimes if we have the wrong people around us, you know, they'll kill dreams that God wants to do, or they'll encourage us to do things that God never asked us to do. And so what do you specifically look like in your friendships, at least in the people that you want to trust with, you know, the genesis, the start of dreams, you know, because that's a big deal of trust that you have to put in somebody for their opinion to weigh in. So like, what do you look for in those types of friends in your life?
Yeah, you know, I think there's a few different dynamics. There's people who've always like just been the biggest encouragers. They've shown up, they've supported, they bought things when nobody was buying things. They were subscribing on day one. You know, those friends, like every entrepreneur knows those people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't even need this resource, but they're buying it, you know, just because they just want to love you, support you. And we've had plenty of that. And I think that's key. You just want those people who, just because they love you, just because they want the best for you. Some of my family have been that way. Some of our friends, you know, have been that way, and they're not necessarily giving advice into how the company's being shaped, but they're just that, man. And they just bring so much. I think, you know, those people in your world are really important, and I wouldn't discredit them just because they haven't gone where you are going. If they're cheering you along the way on the sidelines and just there so that's really valuable. And I say that because sitting on this side of launching a company and now being a founder and an entrepreneur as well as a ministry leader, I've supported other people's launches. I've helped launch things within existing organizations and churches, but to launch something is really scary, and to do it on your own. I think people kind of glorify what that looks like. And now that I've sat at the seat of, you know, when you launch something, hoping that people receive it well, hoping that it really does resonate with people, I am like, I know what it's like to get that first subscriber in when you're just like, I hope somebody listens. You know, I know what it's like to get that good review and that first one and that second one and the third one, when you're like, I really hope, you know, somebody does that, you know, supports
comes in as like a 1-star. You're like, wait, what?
You're like, oh no, you know. So when you get like, those mean so much. And I think that even if you've got dreamers in your world, and maybe it's not your dream, but they're dreaming and they're pursuing the God dream in their heart, like, even if you don't have the knowledge or the expertise to give somebody, you can always be the person who just supports. And don't discount that. Your review, your purchase, your text message at the right time saying, hey, I love the work you're doing, I'm praying for you. It is so meaningful for somebody who is stepping out in faith. That's like, and sometimes those things happen at just the right moments for me and my business partner, Alex, for us to go, okay, we're on the right track. We're doing the right thing. So I think that's really key, is to have some of those people around. And then there is a need to have people who have some sort of wisdom and experience in the places that you want to go. That's equally important, and you need that. You know, I had the benefit from day one of pursuing the launch of Iridescent and continuing to build Iridescent. You know, my husband is a successful entrepreneur, and he's a pretty brilliant businessman. I'm a little, you know, biased. I get it. He's my husband. I love him, but he has the fruit to prove it in his life. And we don't always think the same way. We have different skill sets. We're in different industries in a lot of spaces, but a lot of those principles that he's lived out that are really wise in the area that I need it, I can ask him. And there's been other people like that I've really sought out besides my husband, but sought out other female founders, sought out, you know, some of those coaches, those business coaches, those people who've successfully done things, and said, hey, I really need to have the posture of humility and to be curious and aggressively like seek out the knowledge that I don't have. And that takes a lot of bravery, because you have to admit the places that you're a novice in, and to just be comfortable in that space. I think that's why a lot of people don't try things, is because they don't want to feel that discomfort. They don't want to lean into having to do things that they don't know how to do and figure those things out. But I think if you have the right people around you and you know that that's inevitable, then you can actually enjoy that. Like it can just be like, wow, I'm learning a ton. This is great. This is exciting, as opposed to this is so overwhelming. I don't have what it takes. I don't want to admit what I don't know. It's really a perspective thing, but you do need those people in your world. And that doesn't have to be a massive amount of people, but it just has to be the people who really can speak into your dream and really help you shape it and refine it. And it's okay to be challenged as well. I actually think sometimes there's certainly dream killers, but then there's people who actually are pointing out some really important things. And it's really that constructive criticism that we need to continue to give birth to the right things that God wants us to, and to allow things to get stronger. You know, Iridescent, what it looked like 3 years ago is not what it looks like today. 3 years from now, it's going to look very different. It's going to continue to evolve. And I think one of the things that we've just got comfortable with is, you know, we're going to put things out there when they're like 80% instead of that 100%, so that we can actually get feedback in real time and see what's resonating with women and see and then we'll just continue to evolve. Like, yes, we're led by the Spirit of God, but we're also going to take that feedback, and we're not going to be so sensitive or defensive or why didn't you like this thing, or we're just going to stay really, really humble and open. And I think that perspective is important. So I don't think all criticism is bad. I don't think all naysayers are actually really bad. I think we need a few of those to sharpen us and to give us a little bit of a conviction. If it was easy, you know, I think everybody would do stuff. So if it's a little hard, that's okay. That's actually really good, because it makes you more and more I think committed to the thing that you're like, no, God's called me to do this. It's hard, but I'm going to do it. And that makes you more hungry, and it makes you, I think, teachable. And I think it really does, great fruit comes out of that.
Yeah. And especially, you know, a lot of people that build businesses, they generally hold the disposition where it's like, they're always thinking about the future. They're thinking about what could be. So we need people in our lives that kind of just like bring us a little bit down to earth from time to time and think about, okay, no, you still have to deal with what's in front of you today. I know for me, that's a big one. And, but it is cool, you know, when you start something, to see other people start things, because you understand the process of overcoming fear and difficulty. And so it's like, whenever I see any one of my friends or anybody like on Instagram starting something, I'm always like, yes, this is amazing. Like you understand now too, you know, it's like this little community that's built. But I love what you were kind of talking about in terms of obviously some criticism is good, and those important relationships in your life. And I'm curious for you I'm sure I already know the answer, but from the start, what you thought of 3 years from now, you know, has it kind of been what you expected, or has it been drastically different, and, you know, in a good or bad way, I guess?
Yeah. I think the general mission and like vision to really meet women where they're at, empower them. I think we always we were very clear on our value system from day one. And I think we've stayed very true to that and seen that just continue to take more and more shape. We always wanted to be a space that really did celebrate the diversity of women. So it's not just one perspective or even just one season of life that's represented. You know, we wanted to be able to cross some of those divides that exist in a very polarized society, and just celebrate those differences instead of attack each other for them. So I think those things have really, you know, we weren't quite sure how that's going to happen. We're like, that's our dream. It might seem impossible some days to have that in a digital space, but we've really seen that happen. And so that definitely has come to life the way that, I guess, to the degree that we imagined, and we are just praying and believing that that'll happen even more and more. But a lot of the specifics, no way. I mean, you put something out there, and then you I think it's really important when you're building something to just not be so loyal to the thing that you built that you forget about the mission that you're called to. That's so really we've just really, and one of the things that we say to our team, we're 3 years old, but we frequently say, hey, we are too young of a company to already be set in our ways. So if I hear us saying that we're not going to make a change because that's just how we do things, then we really got off track somewhere. Like it needs to be what is most effective to further the mission. So I do think there's been a lot of things that have just kind of surprised us, and other things that we planned for, but we've been okay with that evolution. I think probably the thing that surprised me the most, which I shouldn't have been surprised by, but I get it sometimes, I guess, I don't know, stubborn. I thought that it was going to happen. Like, I thought we were going to hit certain milestones a lot sooner than we did. And I'm very, my personality, I think I'm always like on to the next thing. And, I'm okay, great. We have this many, but what about this? What about this? And just impatient basically at different times. So I have had to learn the art of celebrating the daily wins, and also just making sure that as I'm making plans, not to shrink my vision or shrink the dream, but to allow myself more time to get there, and to go, okay, you know what? I think the dream is really big. We'll get there, but it's probably not going to happen in 3 months. It might not even happen in 3 years. So we're just going to celebrate the progress and the growth along the way. And I think that's a really important thing. For usually the dream in your heart is just going to take you longer than you think it will. It'll be harder than you think it will, and it'll totally be worth it. But to have that mindset, we live in a culture that really celebrates like instant success. We celebrate a now that's wow, but we don't actually celebrate longevity. And so I think that's something that if you're called to a dream, to know, hey, I'm actually going to be in this for the long haul. So I'm going to do it when it's convenient. I'm going to do it when it's not. And I'm not looking for easy rewards in 3 months. Certainly hear me. You need to make money if you're a company, you need to do certain things and grow and stuff, but have a long-term vision. Go like, where are we going to be in 5 years? That's what I'm going to work towards today. Not where do I need to be in 3 months? And I think that's something that you have to actively fight, because it's counterculture to a lot of the way our society deems success.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think people either get caught in one of the two. It's either, I'm so focused on the day-by-day tasks that I really don't realize what I'm building towards, or it's you have lofty goals, you have what you want your business to become, but then you're so consumed with that you don't create daily tasks in order to get there. And so there always needs to be a balance, between the future, the now, and what we do now so that we can get to that goal that we want in the future. And so that's a really good point. And I also loved what you were talking about in terms of being a young company and starting things at 80%, and seeing how people react to it. Because I think another thing that stops people from, either starting a business or even adapting their current business is they just want certainty. Yeah. And I had a really, they want to know that something's going to work. And I had a really good conversation with the pastor, and we were kind of just talking about, different things that he's trying in his ministry, and, and I brought up the question, and I was like, but like, what if you start something and like people hate it, right? Yeah. And he says, okay, I'll ask you a better question. He goes, what if I start something and they don't hate it and they actually love it? And he's like, so many people are so consumed with the what if this doesn't work that they never think about, okay, but what does it mean when it does work? And so, that's what I always feel encouraged by, of if you're wanting to start a platform, if you want to start a business, you always people always naturally will think of the negatives of like, okay, but what if I start this and nobody likes it? It doesn't catch traction, but on the flip side, what if you do start it and you create something amazing for people and you build something out that you're passionate about? So I love that what you're talking about of the 80% of just like, you just got to see what resonates with people, right? Yeah.
And I want to liberate some people too. Like, you're gonna fail at some stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like there's no way you can be a visionary, a founder, a pioneer, an innovator, any of that without failing a handful of times. I've just gotten really used to it. So I kind of just changed my perspective. Like, there's certain things we have been very successsul with Iridescent, and there's certain things that we tried and went, well, not doing that again, but now we know, and exactly. So I think you're not going to hit that perfect goal on day one. You're going to learn along the way. And so I just want to encourage some people here who are listening, like, man, the most encouraging thing I could say to you is you will fail at some things. And that's actually really good for you. And it's really good for the dream. It's really good for the company, or it's really good for the platform or the ministry. Like, it's just part of the process. And it's not the end all, like I think too, especially, you're putting yourself out there. when we launched Iridescent and we had our launch day and stuff, I just remember being like, oh no, now everybody's going to see how many followers we have. And I hope it's more than 10. And, we hope our subscription grows and stuff so, it's just, there's a lot of nerves and fear there because it feels very public. We're either going to succeed very publicly or we're going to fail very publicly. And, I totally understand that because there's so many things we've done where we're like, it feels like everybody's watching. Well, not everybody's watching, our target audience is watching and they're making decisions, but they're not, it's not the whole world that's watching, even though it might feel that way and feel very close to your heart. But as much as possible, I just want to encourage people like, that's okay too. Like, it's actually okay to have something not go as well as you thought. And that was something that you publicly put out there. Because again, I don't think any of your audience is going, oh, they failed. They're just going, that was okay. And then the next thing you put out, they're going to go, oh man, this is amazing. And they're going to share it with somebody else. And, so the way that you might perceive your failure is very different than the other people around you. They're not seeing it in terms of failure, success. They're just seeing what resonates with them, what's speaking to them right now, what they're feeling connected to. And the great thing about that is you always have a new try every day. At connection, at ministry, at encouraging and equipping, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Most likely people aren't thinking as severely as we're thinking about our own product.
Oh, absolutely.
We're like, oh my gosh, people are judging me when really they just like, we're like, and they scrolled past it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That lack of like or follow wasn't really personal,
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's just an important thing for us to keep in mind, is like, hey, not everybody. And nobody else thinks about your dream as much as you do. And they never will. It's just the burden that you carry. That's also a gift. So like you just can steward it with a little bit of balance, so you don't think too much and get obsessed at every little thing, but you don't think so little that you don't actually do the work that you're supposed to be doing today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I loved one of your posts a little bit ago. You kind of talked about on Instagram the importance of no. And so that resonated with me because if you ask anybody, I'm like a yes person to the max. Like my wife gets mad at me because I'll commit to plans like 2 weeks out that like we already had plans and we can't do it. And so, and I always forget to tell her that I made plans. So I'm like a yes guy, like, yeah, let's do it. Like totally, whether that be plans, whether it be like business ideas, whether, anything. And I think internally, a lot of people are that way too. We just want to do everything. Yeah. But for you, I guess you can kind of speak to this, the importance, especially as young adults and people, because we are very social people. We love hanging out. We love overextending ourselves. So I guess you can speak to that a little bit of the importance of no that you found, at least with Iridescent or your own ministry.
Yeah, I think the big aha moment for me a few years ago was realizing that every time I say yes, I'm actually saying no to something else. And just to make sure that I'm okay with that in the big picture, So you can't be at all places, you can't do everything, and you can't do everything equally well. And I think the whole idea, I'll just speak to like kind of the space that I'm in with women for a second, but I think we really glorified for a few years and still do this like hashtag boss lady. She does it all. She does it amazing. Like she, she always looks phenomenal and the kids are always fed and she's got this killer job and she's leading the board meetings and then she's going home and she's like a great, wifey or whatever. It's like all these things. And I'm like, that is so not real life. Like no way. Half of our meetings now, let's be real, we're wearing sweatpants, as we Zoom everything and the laundry's not done and we fought with somebody today and we don't know what we're doing. And, it's like, that's more of real life. And that's real life at every level. I think that's just, we can't excel at everything equally at all times. So I think it's just really important for us to go, what are the things that I do really want to focus on? What are the priorities? And that's not an exercise you have to do on your own. Like that's where we get to invite the leadership of the Holy Spirit and allow the Spirit of God to speak to us and say, hey, my life's yours. Like, what do I need to focus on this week? What do I need to focus on this season of my life and make those a priority? And different seasons, different things, man, like different seasons, different things. So I think we kind of get into the trap of saying yes to everything because of a few things. I think we don't understand that our yes comes with a no. we think we're more capable of accomplishing than we are, which is pride, or we're afraid that we're going to miss out. Like if I say no to this, especially when you're building something, you feel like everything you have to say yes to.
Yeah.
But then you get into this like hustle mentality without understanding that God's provision is also with you. So he's going to tell you what to say yes to and no to, and his provision is in the obedience, not just in your hard work, you know? So I think there's some of that there, which really comes down to like a trust in God. And then I think, you know, there's a lot of comparison. Like we see other platforms that are larger. We see what other people are doing. We see this ministry or this company. And then we feel like we have to say yes because it makes us look like we're bigger. It makes our platform feel bigger. It makes the, you know, but you kind of, it doesn't. And at the end of the day, that doesn't change anything. You're just more tired for the work that you're supposed to do. And I do think sometimes you can do things and you are working really hard, but because you didn't check in with God about what you're supposed to be doing, you're just wearing yourself out and the fruit isn't there. It's not because God hasn't called you to the dream or the dream isn't working. It's because you stopped checking in about what your yeses and nos should be. So, and I've heard this, I've learned this the hard way. Like I'm a serial yes person because I hate missing out. Like my husband laughs at me. Like I like to be in the know with everything. Like what's going on? Let's do this, you know? And so I've really had to step back and be like, okay, but in the season, that's not wisdom for me. And again, I want to have longevity in this. So how do I do this from a place of wholeness and health and with wisdom with my time? Because my time is valuable. My time does matter. So does everybody else's. And again, different things. I mean, we're talking about, you know, for me with Iridescent Women and stuff, but you know, for some of you listening right now, you just might be really relationally unfed right now. Like you have a very like pandemic has shifted things. Friendships might be different. Relationships you might be disconnected from church life in a way that you haven't been before. And really right now, priority needs to be rebuilding that Christ-centered community for you. It might be rebuilding those really strong relationships and having that sense of community again that you need, you know, then make that the priority. So you're going to say yes to more things there and maybe say no to some of those extra hours at work. Some of you are in a building phase and you're building your company or whatever, then you're going to focus there for a while. And you might be saying no to some other things that could be fun for the minute, but you just got to have a sense of, hey, where is God leading me? And to be doing it led by the Spirit of God. Because if you do that, then you can kind of stop apologizing for your no's as well. And just kind of live confident in that space.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love, you know, talking about overextending yourself. And I found like who you are, who I am is so much more important than what I do. And at least, you know, even in the last 3 months of starting this podcast, what I found is the more that I overextend myself, the less I give my best to the people that really matter in my life. My wife, my friends, you know, the more stressed out I am, the more sharp I am. And that's just not what I relationally my friends or my wife deserves. You know, they deserve my best. That after I'm done with work for the day, I get to spend some quality time or going out. I'm not always just like looking at my phone, stressed because I've done so much that it's just consuming all of my time. And there is that balance, but that is great that you just have checks in your spirit. You got to know what your limit is. You have to be honest, and you have to maybe ask your friends or the people around you, because they'll probably be able to shed some light on that of like, actually, you're kind of stressed all the time. You know, you should probably do a little bit less. It's not that fun to be around you. So that's a very awesome.
Good point. Very good point.
Well, let's see. We can kind of start to wrap up the conversation a little bit, but I'm curious to know for you at least because I was reading your Instagram, and you know, you're talking about potential, you know, and I love that, of bringing out people's potential. And I feel like a lot of people that might be listening to this podcast might be in a space where they're saying, yes, I feel like I have a lot of potential, but it's like, what do I do with it? And so I guess for you, what would your encouragement be to any listener that has a passion in their heart, that wants to take a direction doing something, but they don't really know where to start or what to do with it first?
Yeah. I would say use that passion to serve others. And I think sometimes we were like, God, can you download the business plan? And he's like, actually, why don't you just serve the need next to you? And out of that, you know, the business plan will emerge over time. Or God, give me a platform, and why is my platform larger? It's like, well, you know what, you're wanting a platform of hundreds or thousands, millions, but I have this small group here right now that I really need you to be faithful to.
Yeah.
So I do think like, hey, serve a need, like use your, and because I feel one thing that we potentially this generation could be missing, and I'm saying this within the body of Christ, is we really are more interested in building platforms than building people. And I think if we can build people, then we'll never be short or lacking a platform and God's timing. So I would just say, hey, start there, and walk in obedience. There's a difference between going after something that you really want to see happen and asking God to bless it along the way than to say, hey, God, my life is yours. So what would you have me do? And sometimes I think the direction he's going to give us doesn't make sense on paper, but if it's what he's called us to do, then he's looking for our obedience and he will bless that obedience. So your pathway towards your dream being fulfilled versus the one that God has might be very different, and that's okay. But I'm trusting him with Iridescent, not me and my plans, And so I would just really encourage people, hey, serve a need. Build people, not your platform. Get what I'm saying? Like they can be one of the same, but just be about the business of building people and you'll never lack a platform.
Yeah.
But I think if you focus on building your platform, it might be at the detriment of people, including you. So just build people. You'll never be short of a platform, and actually walk in obedience, even if that's really hard. And God might say to you, for some of you listening, you're like, oh, okay, I'll check in. And God's like, go. Like, why are you not taking that next step? Some of you, if you really sit down and ask God and pray about things and bring some wise counsel, it's going to say, hey, wait, just wait on me. Timing's not right, but wait on me. And that might be really frustrating. Both might be frustrating depending on who God's speaking to. But if he's telling you to do it, just walk in that obedience and walk in that trust, because he has your days marked. He has the path for you, and he's the best entrepreneur of all. He's the best founder. He's the best creator. He's the best innovator. Like he is. He is. And so if we can just trust him, then there's going to be a lot more fruit on that path, and a lot more freedom, and a lot more joy, and ultimately a lot more leading people to Jesus.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. For the women that are listening, how can they, if they obviously want to look more into Iridescent Women, look to get involved in that way, how can they do that?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. Hey, there's a few things you can do. You can go to iridescentwomen.com and you can subscribe to our site. We also have a membership program, which we'd love to invite you to. There's a bunch of different membership offerings. I'll give you my code. It's Nicole, and then it's 50% off all of the membership offerings. So you can use that at checkout, but we'd love for you to join, not just subscription, but also our membership. And then you can follow us at Iridescent Women and stay up to date on Instagram with all the exciting things that we have going on. But yeah, we'd love for you to be a part of our community.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll wherever this is at, Apple Podcasts or YouTube, we'll link, kind of the website, your social media, so people can get. So if you are a woman listening, I encourage you, I love having people on that I enjoy following as a person, as a leader, because, this is just an overflow of who you are. So I just really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I know this was like, there was so much packed into this that I know that our listeners are going to be blessed by. So again, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. And I just love I feel like, am I in season 1 of the podcast?
Season 1. Yeah.
I feel like I got a story to tell. I get to tell people I was on season 1 of The Future Is Now, because truly the future is bright for what you're doing. So it's an honor to be on the podcast. And I just can't wait to see what God continues to do as he expands your reach.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Well, for everybody else listening, thank you so much for listening or watching. The Future Is Now, and we will see you guys next week.